Greetings and welcome to Citta Chats #1, discussion series on yoga, yoga practice, yoga philosophy, what is yoga. I'm here with Caitlin Berkevitz, yoga student and teacher in training. And we're just going to take these conversations and see what kind of questions come up. Each one's having a slightly different theme, often grounded in yoga texts. And today there's a question on the table. Caitlin?
So after completing this teacher training, a lot of friends have been coming up to me with certain questions regarding yoga. One of them being, what is the end goal of yoga? And I have the knowledge, I've had the tools to answer this question, but I wouldn't really know how to put it in a succinct answer. And I would like to hear your thoughts.
Well, first thing that comes to mind, if somebody came to class and asked that, I would turn it around and ask, what is it to you? For some people, it's an emphasis on the posture practice. And they don't necessarily know that there's a wide body of other practices, ideas, thoughts on that. But for you, who went into the teacher training program and is curious about what is yoga, where then is the definitive source on what yoga is? Where would you look?
In the texts.
Which ones in particular?
The sutras.
Right. So the Yoga Sutras of Patanjali, if we're going to say something is yoga, is the definitive source text. Arguably, if it's not in there, we may question what does it have to do with yoga. That said, the physical practice alone, for health, for stress relief, for making me play baseball better, making me a better rock climber, a more adept musician, managing breath with my singing, whatever it is, all those are highly valuable things. And for some people, the posture practice may be the beginning and the end goal. Mm. But let's take that a little deeper and look then in the Yoga Sutras. Do you recall from our discussions in the program where then, what's the most succinct or summary of what yoga is that we get from the Yoga Sutras?
Reining in the mind and being mindful, I guess.
Yeah.
Your thoughts and actions, the self.
Right, so that's a progression. And the one thing we looked at in the Yoga Sutras is the end of the story is told in the beginning. Mm. So the first 3 sutras describe for us what is yoga. And a very common verse you'll hear quoted a lot is Yogash Chitta Vritti Nirodha. Yogaha Chitta Vritti Nirodha. And that describes what you said, reining in, having in hand the thought processes. But for why? What happens when I do that? And you alluded to that in the comment about the self. What did you retain or remember from? I can put it back on you there.
Well, being conscious of your thoughts and actions and not holding on to these attachments or attaching to certain thoughts or likes or dislikes. It really creates a contemplative mind which and then, I guess to put it in simple terms, enhances your quality of life and really gets you in tune with yourself.
Right, and the verse in the Yoga Sutras is Tadadrastu Swarupe Avastanam, and that Avastanam is abiding in the Swarupa, the essence or the true nature of the self, of my being. So it's a way of saying, where am I identifying with things that I take to be me? My self-esteem, my sense of self-worth, my meaning in life. Each of us will attach different sense of that self-esteem, self-worth, meaning to things we do, things we want, things we have, things we're afraid of losing. And what then, asking the question, what is my true nature, would be what yoga is. An exploration of what is that true nature. And while the Yoga Sutras and the Bhagavad Gita do come to a conclusion, each one of us that will manifest differently. And we want to leave room for an authentic self-study. And self-study is, where else does that come up in the Yoga Sutras? We didn't rehearse this. The Swadhyaya,
yeah.
which is in, where do we find that?
In the
Ashtanga, right?
Yeah,
the eight
the
branches.
8 limbs.
The eight limbs of practice. So the first book of the Yoga Sutras sets up what is yoga. Yoga is the reining in, having in hand the thought processes. To what end? When we do that, the self abides in its own true nature. The whole rest of the Yoga Sutras, the chapter 2 in particular, is the chapter about practice, sadhana, sadhanapada. And in that second chapter is the 8 branches, the Ashtanga of yoga.
Yeah.
And one of those is self-study. So, but that doesn't mean I study myself on my own. Who is this I that is going to study the self, right? It's really through, by definition, based in looking at what the texts are offering and in dialogue with teachers and peers. So it's really not something we're invited to pursue on our own. And why? Because I can be open to all kinds of misconceptions, misinterpretations, or wrong conclusions about my nature. Every day we make a discernment about things that we thought to be true that then we find out are not. I test to see if this is salt. I thought it was salt. I taste it to find out it's sugar. I'm willing to find out I was wrong all the time. And having the possibility that what I take myself to be, teacher, writer, artist, musician, often we identify with a craft, parent, all these things that we attach to I, they're all there, they're all true. But often if I don't succeed at a painting or something, then maybe my self-esteem is less than. And I will create this idea that I have failed. According to whose standards? And why is I the painter? Does that make me any less of a brother or sister? Any less of a parent? Any less of a whatever my day job might be? Right? And yet we attach this whole sense of self-worth to that one role. So often we say as each role brings with it a hangover. And part of the yoga practices of meditation and reflection, and even in asana, where we clear the mind of all the chatter of the stories of the day. Why do we like going to asana class? It's a time when we're not feeling the pressures of be this, be what somebody else is expected, be also what is required of me out of duty, responsibility. It's not a bad thing. We have things to be done. But there's a freedom that comes. Often we have that same freedom at the ocean or with somebody that we're fond of, and for that time the stories fall away. The hangovers of the other roles fall away. And you experience this as something we explored in meditation. So it invites the question, which of all those things am I? There's something in me that is present in all the roles. The talker, the doer, the writer, the sister, the daughter, right? That one who is present in all the roles is getting closer and closer to what we would call our essential nature, the swarupa avastanam.
So, in discussing what is yoga, you mentioned the reining in of thoughts, and I've heard some people think that this is more of a ceasing of the fluctuations of the mind or stilling the mind. Could you elaborate and clear this up?
Right, so the verse you're bringing up is that Citta vritti nirodha. Citta is consciousness, or the different aspects of mind. Vritti is literally a swirling movement, like leaves do vritti in the wind, so it's a whirling of the mind. And nirodha is then that word that, what is that? A stilling, a ceasing. And this is why the Yoga Sutras, any text really needs to be worked with a teacher. And I get a lot of my understanding from Swami Dayananda Saraswati, who has deep linguistic and grammatical understanding to look at what is a valid interpretation. The Yoga Sutras will never tolerate internal contradictions within itself. So any interpretation of one verse has to make sense with the rest of the verses. And a sutra, by definition, has to take into consideration a body of knowledge of the time it was written, and frankly of any time. This is where its longevity comes. It should not be in conflict with another body of knowledge that we have even in our times. So if we look at how the mind works, a ceasing of thought doesn't happen, right? And there is always something in our awareness. Awareness has always some area of perception. As Swami Dayananda says, a thoughtless mind is a thoughtless pursuit. Meaning the empty mind makes no sense. And then we also look a little further down in the sutras, even in that first chapter. The vrittis, the thoughts, can be classified into 5 categories. And of those 5 categories, which is sleep, memory, wrong perception, right perception, valid testimony, these things, those 5 categories can then be organized in 2 different types of each of the 5. One type inhibits my sense of self, me getting closer to my essential nature, which remember is the ultimate end of all things yoga. All the rest of the Yoga Sutras then point to that verse, where we say the self abiding in its own true nature. So anything else in discussion is always, it's the yellow brick road, that's the Emerald City, right? So all the other little bricks along the way, they're all going to that same destination. So it has to be in sync with that. And so either a thought process can inhibit my coming closer to my essential nature, or it can encourage it. Right, and those are the terms that come up. Klishta is an inhibiting thought, an inhibiting vritti. Aklishta, anytime you put a in front of a word in Sanskrit, it is not that. So aklishta would be non-inhibiting. And these 2 words are often translated as painful and pleasurable, which again doesn't hold up to scrutiny. Mm-hmm. So we have to look at what are possible interpretations, test them, and it's not a pleasurable or painful thought. That has little to do with my true nature. Though our true nature we find is by definition whole and content, in those moments where we experience freedom from want. These are all qualities of our essence, if you will. So the practice is not so much no thought mind, but being discerning with what I feed this mind with. And it's also not an experience in time. It's not like in meditation I have this citta vritti nirodha, I have this quiet mind, and it's a state that I achieve, and a state then has an end. Rather, it's an attitude I carry with me all day.
And when you say discerning the mind or these thoughts, does that mean deciding which thoughts to act upon and which to just let pass?
Right. It's not a denial or a suppression.
Yeah.
Right? But I might have an angry thought, and I can decide the words that come out of my mouth need not hurt this person, need not hurt me. Mm. I want 10 cookies. I decide maybe I could only have 1. And also even the thoughts that loop me into a sense of inadequacy, self-pity, blame, guilt, regret. Like a train of thought, we choose to let the train go over the horizon, not get on. We witness the thoughts and which ones can we reinforce and nurture? Which ones do we see really may not have much to do with where I am today, with how I should respond to a situation. So at first it takes will and practice, and then over time more intrinsic, more impulsive.
I remember a line from Swami Dayananda's teaching of the Bhagavad Gita that said, "You are not your thoughts." And I think this is something that may be kind of revolutionary or hard to grasp for some people because, we separate a lot of who we are into our thoughts and our actions, and to tell someone you are not your thoughts, that could really make them think, what do you mean? But I mean, I've had thoughts definitely that don't define me as a person, or I wouldn't want to attach to, or would be ashamed to admit, I can't believe I thought that. So maybe you could shed some light onto that.
There's a lot of layers to that. Beautiful. one thing that comes up in the Bhagavad Gita too is Arjuna says, "You're telling me I can control this mind? It's like trying to control a monkey." It's like, no, it's 100 drunken monkeys, and yes, you can control it. So yeah, we should not be surprised or angry at this mind that goes all kinds of weird places. Due to circumstance, upbringing, external environments, food, right? Brain chemistry is affected by diet and sleep. We get out of balance, all kinds of things start happening. So those are signs of various things that need to be addressed, whether it's food, sleep, or so on. But the I am not my thoughts opens up a larger conversation, which is at the heart of the whole sense of I, the subject. I am one who perceives objects of my perception. And so getting at how do I think all these things that I am, and looking at my thoughts and my actions are often things we associate with I. Looking at that carefully and saying, how do I disprove this theory that I am what I think, right? That opens up the whole conversation of our relationship to subject-object, and who is the one perceiving, and what is an object of my perception, and that'll be the topic of Citta Chat number 2.